Tell me, Omega, did they at least warn you that the dress belonged to another woman? Claire Bennett stopped breathing. The words came quietly from the man waiting at the altar, yet they seemed to travel farther than a shout. Across Blackwood Citadel's great hall, hundreds of candles trembled beneath vaulted stone arches. Snow battered the stained glass windows. Noble wolves stood shoulder to shoulder beneath black banners embroidered with the silver crest of the royal bloodline. And every one of them was staring at her. Claire tightened her fingers around the white roses in her hands. The dress was beautiful. That was almost the cruelest part. Pearls had been sewn along the ivory bodice. Silver thread curled across the sleeves like frost. But the waist had been hastily pinned tighter, and the hem dragged several inches behind Claire because the gown had never been measured for her slender body. It had been made for Vanessa, her sister. The woman Alpha King Damian Blackwood had been promised. The woman who had disappeared before sunrise. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you believe that kindness is power, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us love redeems the broken. Now, back to Claire. Only 6 hours earlier, Claire had awakened to her mother pounding on her bedroom door. Vanessa was gone. Her window stood open. Her traveling cloak was missing. And beside her abandoned engagement ring lay a letter saying she would rather lose her family than marry the feared Alpha King. By noon, royal soldiers had surrounded the Bennett estate. By sunset, Claire was wearing her sister's wedding dress. No one had asked whether she agreed. They had only reminded her what would happen if the marriage treaty failed. Her father would be arrested. Their lands would be seized. Their pack would be declared oathbreakers. So Claire had climbed into the royal carriage without crying. Now she stood before the reason everyone else had been afraid. Damian Blackwood. He was younger than the stories made him sound, perhaps 28, but there was nothing youthful about the stillness in his face. He stood well over 6 feet, broad shoulders framed by ceremonial black armor. Dark hair swept back from a sharply cut face. A thin scar disappeared beneath his collar. But it was his eyes that made Claire's pulse stumble. Violet. Not merely violet. They seemed to glow. The eyes of a royal alpha whose wolf had never lost a challenge. Claire forced herself to meet them. I knew whose dress it was, Your Majesty. A whisper moved through the court. An Omega was supposed to lower her gaze before an Alpha King. Claire didn't. Something changed in Damian's expression. Not softness. Interest, perhaps. Then it vanished. The priest cleared his throat. The treaty requires a daughter of House Bennett. My sister is a daughter of House Bennett, Claire said. Her father stiffened behind her. Damian's gaze remained fixed on Claire. And yet she ran. There was no anger in his voice. That frightened her more. Yes. And you stayed. Claire swallowed. I was brought. For the first time, Damian's jaw tightened. The distinction mattered to him. She didn't know why. Outside, thunder rolled beyond the mountains. The ceremony continued. Ancient vows were spoken beneath the moon goddess's silver emblem. Claire heard her own voice answering when required, though everything felt strangely distant. Then Damian took her hand. His palm was warm. Claire almost flinched. A strange heat raced beneath her skin, sharp and sudden, climbing toward her heart. Damian felt it too. His fingers tightened. For one heartbeat, those violet eyes flashed almost silver. Then he released her. The priest noticed nothing. By blood, oath, and crown, I bind Claire Bennett of Silver Creek to Damian Blackwood, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Silence. No celebration followed. No applause. Claire looked across the sea of unfamiliar faces and understood with terrible clarity that no one here saw a queen. They saw the sister who had been available. The replacement. Damian placed the royal ring upon her finger. It was too large. Of course it was. It had been made for Vanessa too. When the ceremony finally ended, the nobles bowed. Your Majesty. They were speaking to Damian. Claire knew because almost none of them looked at her. She followed her new husband through a side corridor where the music from the great hall faded behind thick stone walls. At last Damian stopped. They were alone. Claire could hear the storm outside and her own heartbeat inside her ribs. Damian turned. Whatever restraint he had shown before the court disappeared. "I will honor the treaty," he said. "Your family will remain protected." Claire waited. "But understand something before tonight creates expectations neither of us intends to fulfill." There it was. The wound before the blade even touched skin. Damian stepped closer. His shadow swallowed the white silk at her feet. This marriage was meant for Vanessa. Claire held his gaze. "You are wearing her dress. Her ring. Tomorrow you will occupy rooms prepared for her." Each word landed carefully. "Precisely. And you will carry my name because circumstances left me no alternative." Claire's throat burned. Still, she refused to look down. Damian's violet eyes hardened. "Do not mistake the crown for affection, Claire." A pause. "You are only her substitute." For several seconds, she said nothing. Then Claire slowly removed the oversized ring. Damian's eyes dropped toward her hand. She turned the ring once between her fingers before pushing it firmly back into place. "If that is what I am," she whispered, "then remember something too." Damian looked at her. Claire lifted her chin. "You may have married me because you lost your first choice." Her voice trembled only once. "But never ask me to spend my life apologizing for being the woman who stayed." And for the first time that night, the Alpha King had no answer. Claire learned before breakfast that Blackwood Castle had already decided what kind of queen she would be. Invisible. Morning came pale and colorless through the tall windows of the eastern tower. Snow pressed against the glass in soft white sheets, muting the mountains beyond. Claire stood barefoot beside a bed large enough for two people and stared at the untouched pillow beside hers. Damian had never entered the room. She told herself she was relieved. After what he had said the night before, she should have been. "You are only her substitute." Yet the words had followed her into sleep and waited beside her when she woke. A knock sounded. 3 servants entered before Claire could answer. The oldest carried a silver tray. The other 2 held dresses. White, silver, pale blue. Beautiful gowns. Claire touched the sleeve of the nearest one. The fabric was cold beneath her fingertips. "This is too long." The youngest maid lowered her eyes. "We can alter it, Your Majesty." Claire looked more closely. The shoulders were wider than hers. The waist had already been temporarily pinned. Even the embroidered initials inside the collar had been carefully removed, leaving tiny punctures in the silk. V. Vanessa Bennett. Of course. Were all of these made for my sister? The room became very quiet. The older servant finally answered. The royal wardrobe was prepared months ago. Claire released the sleeve. No one expected the bride to change. "No, Your Majesty." The title sounded almost apologetic. Claire turned toward the mirror. A young woman stared back at her. 23 years old. Pale skin. Long chestnut hair loose around delicate shoulders. Bright blue eyes made darker by a sleepless night. She looked small inside a room designed for a future queen. For Vanessa. That feeling was painfully familiar. Claire had spent most of her childhood standing half a step behind her sister. Vanessa had shifted early. Vanessa had outrun boys twice her size. Vanessa had entered a room and made people turn. Claire had been different. Her Omega Wolf was gentle, quiet, almost painfully sensitive to the emotions around her. As a child, she could tell when servants were frightened before they spoke. She knew when wounded animals needed stillness instead of restraint. When someone cried, something inside Claire always pulled her toward them. Her father called it softness. Her mother called it weakness. Vanessa called it useful. Claire understands people, her sister would say whenever she needed Claire to soothe an angry servant or cover one of her mistakes. It had almost sounded like praise. Almost. Claire selected the simplest pale dress. This one. The maid hesitated. Lady Vanessa preferred the silver. Claire looked at her. "I am not Lady Vanessa." The girl went pale. Claire immediately softened her voice. "I know you meant no offense." "No, Your Majesty." "What is your name?" The question startled her more than anger would have. "Emily." "Then, Emily, please find someone who can shorten this dress." Claire glanced at the remaining gowns. And after today, I would like clothes made to my measurements. The older servant frowned. That may require authorization from the royal household. Then request it. From the king. Claire paused. A small humiliation disguised as procedure. Even her own clothing required Damian's permission. No, she turned toward the window. Request fabric. I can pay a seamstress from my personal allowance. The older woman said nothing. Claire suspected that answer would travel through the castle before lunch. Let it. She had barely finished dressing when another servant arrived to escort her to breakfast. The royal dining chamber was enormous. Damian sat at the far end of a black oak table, already dressed in dark military clothing. Morning light caught the hard line of his jaw as he read a stack of reports. He did not look up when Claire entered. There was no place set beside him. Her plate waited 6 chairs away. Claire stopped. 1 heartbeat. 2. A servant shifted nervously. Damian finally raised those violet eyes. Claire expected him to order her closer. He didn't. So she walked to the waiting chair and sat. Breakfast continued in silence. Damian read. Claire ate. Between them stretched polished wood, silver dishes, and everything neither intended to say. Then the doors opened. 3 members of the royal council entered. The first 2 bowed to Damian. The third, a silver-haired noblewoman named Lady Margaret Ashford, glanced at Claire. Her gaze traveled over the altered dress. A smile touched her mouth. How fortunate. Claire set down her cup. Margaret approached the table. Lady Vanessa always said pale blue made her look washed out. Damian's eyes lifted from the report. Claire felt the room tighten. Margaret continued. I suppose nothing need go to waste now. A servant stared at the floor. Someone near the door swallowed a laugh. Claire felt heat crawl up her neck. Yesterday, she might have endured it. Yesterday, she had been trying to save her family. Today, she carried a crown. Even if no one believed it belonged to her. Claire folded her napkin carefully. Then she stood. Margaret's smile weakened. You are correct, Lady Ashford. Claire walked toward her. The noblewoman was taller, but Claire did not lower her gaze. Nothing should go to waste. She gently removed the jeweled brooch from her own collar. It bore Vanessa's favorite pattern. Claire placed it in Margaret's hand. Please return this to the royal wardrobe. Margaret blinked. And every other item prepared for my sister. The silence deepened. Claire's heart was hammering now. She could feel Damian watching her. I arrived here because another woman left, Claire said quietly. I understand that. Her fingers trembled, so she clasped them together. But I will not spend every morning dressing as her ghost. Margaret's face hardened. You presume much for a substitute. The words struck exactly where she intended. Claire did not move. Then a chair scraped against stone. Damian had risen. Every wolf in the chamber froze. His violet eyes moved from Margaret to Claire. For one impossible second, hope betrayed her. She wondered whether he would defend her. Damian said nothing. He simply gathered his reports. Then he walked past Claire and left the room. The doors closed behind him. That silence hurt more than Margaret's insult. Claire stared at the empty doorway. Something fragile inside her finally stopped waiting. She turned back to Margaret. Perhaps I am a substitute. Claire removed Vanessa's silver necklace and laid it beside the untouched breakfast. But whatever I become in this castle, her blue eyes no longer trembled. I will become it as myself. Then Claire walked away, unaware that on the other side of the closed doors, Damian Blackwood had stopped in the corridor. He had heard every word. And for the first time since the wedding, the Alpha King found himself wondering whether the woman he had dismissed as a replacement might be the only person in Blackwood Castle who refused to pretend. The portrait was still there when Claire entered the Western Gallery. Vanessa smiled down from the wall in silver silk, one hand resting elegantly against a marble column, golden brown hair arranged beneath a jeweled circlet. The painter had captured everything the court admired about her: confidence, strength, beauty that demanded attention. Claire stopped beneath it. For a moment, she simply stared. Even here, her sister had arrived first. Beautiful, wasn't she? Lady Margaret Ashford's voice drifted from behind her. Claire did not turn immediately. Morning sunlight spilled through the high windows, stretching pale rectangles across the black marble floor. Servants moved quietly at the edges of the gallery, pretending not to listen. Claire had already learned that Blackwood servants heard everything, and that Blackwood nobles expected them to. Margaret approached with two younger women beside her. She was magnificent at the engagement ceremony, Margaret continued. The king barely spoke, of course, but everyone could see they suited each other. Claire finally looked at her. Did they? Margaret's smile tightened. Vanessa was born to stand beside power. There it was again. Not an insult sharp enough to challenge. Something smaller. Cleaner. A needle instead of a knife. Claire had grown up around women who preferred needles. She glanced back at the portrait. Then perhaps it belongs in her family's home. Margaret blinked. I beg your pardon? This portrait. Claire gestured toward it. It should be returned to my parents. One of the younger women gave a quiet laugh. You intend to remove it? Yes, but His Majesty commissioned it. Claire's stomach tightened. She hadn't known that. Margaret saw the hesitation and smiled. Perhaps you should ask your husband before removing something he valued enough to hang in his palace. Claire looked at Vanessa's painted face again. For years, she had been taught to surrender space without being asked. Vanessa received the larger bedroom because she would someday marry well. Vanessa received their grandmother's jewels because they suited an important daughter. When tutors came, Claire learned afterward from Vanessa's discarded notes. It had never seemed cruel enough to protest. That was how such things survived. Not through great acts of brutality. Through 1,000 tiny decisions teaching one person that another mattered more. Claire stepped toward a servant standing near the doorway. Please take it down. The young man froze. Your Majesty? The portrait. His eyes darted toward Margaret. Claire noticed. So did Margaret. You see, the noblewoman murmured. Even the servants understand that wearing a crown does not make something yours. Claire felt the old instinct immediately. Be quiet. Do not embarrass anyone. Make yourself smaller. Her fingers curled against her skirt. Then she remembered Damian's voice. You are only her substitute. Perhaps he believed that. Perhaps the entire castle did. But Claire suddenly understood that if she accepted every reminder in silence, eventually she would begin believing it too. She walked beneath the portrait. Bring a ladder. The servant swallowed. Then bowed. Yes, Your Majesty. Margaret's expression changed. Only slightly. But Claire saw it. The ladder arrived. When the portrait was lifted from its hooks, a clean rectangle remained on the dark stone wall where dust had never touched. Claire stared at the emptiness. It felt strangely beautiful. Put it somewhere safe, she said. Nothing is to be damaged. She turned to Margaret. I have no desire to erase my sister. Her voice remained gentle. I simply refuse to live beneath her. A low sound came from the gallery entrance. Boots against marble. Every servant straightened. Margaret's face lost color. Damian stood beneath the archway. Black uniform. Broad shoulders. Dark hair still damp from the snow outside. His violet eyes went first to Claire. Then to the portrait being carried away. The air changed instantly. Claire could feel his alpha presence pressing through the room like the first warning of a storm. Leave us. No one hesitated. Margaret bowed and disappeared with the others. Soon only Claire and Damian remained. He looked at the empty wall. You removed it. Yes. You did not ask. No, his gaze returned to her. Most wolves would have lowered their eyes. Claire's heartbeat hammered, but she remained still. Why? She almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because the answer seemed painfully obvious. Because I woke in her room. Damian said nothing. I wore her dress. I wear a ring made for her. This morning, servants brought me her clothes. At breakfast, your court reminded me that even the fabric touching my skin belonged to Vanessa first. Claire's voice softened. And then I came here and found her watching me from the wall. Damian's joy tightened. I commissioned that portrait for the treaty announcement. I know. Then you understand it was political. Claire looked at him. That does not make it easier to sleep beneath her shadow. Something flickered across his face. Claire turned away before she could mistake it for sympathy. I told them not to destroy it. It can be returned to my family. She started toward the door. Claire. She stopped. It was the first time he had spoken her name without coldness attached to it. She looked back. Damian stood beneath the empty space where Vanessa had been. Have the royal tailor come tomorrow. Claire frowned. For what? Your wardrobe. She stared at him. Damian's expression remained unreadable. You are Queen of Blackwood. You should not be wearing clothes made for someone else. It was not an apology. Not quite. But something in Claire's chest loosened anyway. Thank you. She reached the doorway before his voice stopped her again. And Claire. She turned. His violet eyes held hers. Choose what replaces the portrait. Claire looked at the enormous empty wall. For the first time since arriving at Blackwood, something here had not already been chosen for Vanessa. I think I'll leave it empty. Damian raised an eyebrow. Why? Claire gave him the smallest smile. Because not every empty space needs to be filled immediately. Then she left. Damian remained alone in the gallery. For a long moment, he stared at the blank stone. He had expected tears from his substitute bride. Perhaps obedience. Perhaps resentment. He had not expected dignity. And he certainly had not expected the strange irritation that tightened inside his chest whenever someone called her Vanessa's replacement. Especially when he remembered that he had been the first person to do it. You carry his crown, but everyone in this room knows whose head it was meant for. The words floated across the banquet table beneath the soft music of violins. Claire's fingers stopped around the stem of her glass. Lady Margaret Ashford sat 3 seats away, dressed in crimson velvet, her silver hair glittering beneath the chandeliers. She had not raised her voice. She did not need to. The nobles nearest her had heard. That was the point. Blackwood's winter feast filled the great hall with candlelight, roasted meat, expensive wine, and wolves who had perfected the art of cruelty without ever dirtying their hands. Claire sat beside Damian for the first time since their wedding. Not 6 chairs away. Beside him. She wore a gown made for her. White silk followed her slender frame, embroidered at the sleeves with tiny silver branches. No initials hidden inside the collar. No alterations where another woman's body had been expected. When Claire had first seen herself in it, she had almost cried. Something made for me. Such a small thing. Such a dangerous thing to want. Across the hall, conversations continued. Damian sat on her right, dressed entirely in black, listening while General Harrison discussed patrols along the northern border. He had barely spoken to Claire all evening, but twice she had caught those violet eyes moving toward her. The second time, he had looked away first. Margaret lifted her wine. To unexpected queens. Several nobles smiled. Claire felt heat rise beneath her skin. She could answer. She could remain silent. Both choices had consequences here. Before she decided, a young noblewoman approached carrying a fresh goblet. Your Majesty. Claire turned. The woman stumbled. Too perfectly. Red wine spilled across Claire's chest. A collective gasp swept the table. The stain spread over white silk like blood. Oh. The woman covered her mouth. I am so terribly sorry. Laughter came from somewhere behind Margaret. Small. Quick. But unmistakable. Claire looked down. Red drops slid from the embroidery onto her hands. For one terrible heartbeat, she was 17 again, standing behind Vanessa at a summer ball after someone had mistaken Claire for a servant. She remembered her mother's whisper. Don't make a scene. She remembered apologizing to the woman who had insulted her. Claire slowly lifted her eyes. The young noblewoman was smiling. Barely. That changed everything. Claire reached for her napkin. No harm done. Margaret leaned back. How gracious. Vanessa would have had the girl removed from court. Claire dabbed at the wine. I am not Vanessa. No, Margaret's gaze moved over the ruined white dress. You certainly are not. This time, the laughter was louder. Claire's hand stopped. She looked toward Damian. He had heard. His expression was unreadable. His violet eyes rested on Margaret, cold enough to silence most wolves. Yet he said nothing. Something inside Claire cracked. Not loudly. There was no dramatic pain. Only the quiet death of an expectation she had never admitted she possessed. She had not expected love. She had not even expected tenderness. But somewhere beneath all her careful defenses, Claire had believed that if she wore his crown, Damian would at least defend what that crown represented. He remained seated. So Claire stood. The hall slowly fell silent. She placed the stained napkin beside her plate. "Please continue your dinner." Then she walked away. No tears. Not until the doors closed behind her. Claire moved through the dark corridor quickly, refusing to let the guards see her face. "Claire." Damian's voice came behind her. She kept walking. "Claire." His hand caught her wrist. She spun around. "Let go." Damian immediately released her. That surprised them both. For several seconds, only their breathing filled the corridor. "What was that?" he asked. Claire stared at him. "You truly have to ask? You left a royal banquet. Before I embarrassed you further?" His brow lowered. "I did not say that." "You didn't say anything." The words struck harder than Claire intended. Damian became still. She looked down at the red stain across her dress. "They mocked me in front of your court. I saw. They poured wine on me deliberately. I know. And you sat there." His jaw tightened. "You are queen. If I silence every person who tests you, they will believe you survive only because I stand behind you." Claire gave a breathless laugh. "So this was a lesson? I expected you to defend yourself. Against your court?" "Yes." Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then something in her expression changed. Not anger. Disappointment. Damian seemed less prepared for that. "I never asked you to love me," she said quietly. His eyes sharpened. "I never asked you to forget Vanessa. I never asked you to pretend this marriage was anything other than what it was." Claire stepped closer. "But you put this crown on my head." Her voice trembled now. She hated that. "If I carry your name, if I sit beside you, if I am expected to represent your kingdom, then do not sit silently while they spit on that crown simply because it happens to be on me." Damian said nothing. Claire swallowed the ache in her throat. "You wanted to see whether I could defend myself?" She nodded toward the banquet doors. "Now you know." She turned away. "Claire." This time she did not stop. Behind her, the doors to the great hall opened. The music died almost instantly. Claire slowed. Damian's voice carried through the hall. Cold. Controlled. Terrifying. "Lady Ashford." Silence followed. "Stand." Claire closed her eyes. Margaret murmured something she could not hear. Then Damian spoke again. "You seem confused about the woman who sat beside me tonight." A pause. "She is not Vanessa Bennett." Claire's breath caught. "She is Claire Blackwood." No one moved. And whether destiny brought her here by design or by another woman's cowardice changes nothing. His alpha power rolled through the stone corridor. "Claire wears my crown." Another pause. "So the next person who humiliates my queen in my hall," his voice dropped, "will answer to me." Claire stood alone beyond the doorway, wine drying like blood across her white dress. Part of her wanted to return. She didn't. Because Damian had defended her only after she had been forced to ask. And somewhere inside Blackwood Castle, the Alpha King was beginning to understand that protecting Claire after she was wounded would never be the same as choosing not to let her be wounded at all. "The royal granaries are full." Claire stared at the old woman standing before her. Outside the narrow windows of Blackwood's lower infirmary, snow fell so heavily that the village below had disappeared beneath white mist. Inside, the air smelled of smoke, damp wool, and bitter herbs. The woman's name was Martha Reed. She had walked 4 miles through the storm carrying her feverish grandson. Now the boy lay beneath 2 thin blankets, his small body trembling. Claire touched his forehead. "Too hot." "What did you say?" Martha lowered her eyes. "The royal granaries, Your Majesty. They are full." Claire looked toward the healer. The woman hesitated, then nodded. 3 storehouses were filled after the autumn tax. Claire slowly removed her hand from the child. "And the Southern District?" "Has received no grain in 11 days. Something cold settled beneath Claire's ribs. She had spent the morning visiting families after hearing that several Omega children had fallen ill. She had expected medicine shortages. perhaps roads blocked by snow. She had not expected hunger beneath the walls of a castle whose tables overflowed every night. Why? No one answered. Claire understood. Who controls distribution? Lord Whitmore. The name belonged to one of Damian's councilmen. Claire stood. Take me to the granaries. The healer went pale. Your Majesty, the king ordered the lower gates closed until the storm passes. Claire looked at the shivering child. Then we will open them. An hour later, Claire stood before the eastern granary with snow gathering in her chestnut hair. 2 guards blocked the doors. I have orders, the captain said. So do I. His eyes flickered toward her. With respect, Your Majesty, Lord Whitmore controls winter provisions. Claire held out her hand. Then give me the keys. He did not move. Behind Claire, dozens of villagers waited in silence. Old men. Mothers. Children wrapped in patched blankets. She could feel their hunger. Not metaphorically. Her omega senses absorbed the exhaustion around her until it seemed to settle inside her own bones. Captain. His jaw tightened. I cannot. Claire looked at the iron lock, then at the axe hanging beside the guard station. She walked toward it. The captain's eyes widened. Your Majesty? Claire lifted the axe. It was heavier than she expected. She nearly lost her balance. Someone behind her gasped. Claire adjusted her grip. If you cannot give me the key, she raised the axe. Then I suppose we do this the embarrassing way. The blade struck the lock. Pain shot through her wrists. The lock held. A child laughed. Claire looked back. A little girl covered her mouth. For some reason, Claire smiled. Then she swung again. The third blow broke the latch. The doors opened. Silence. Rows of grain sacks stretched into darkness. Hundreds of them. Enough food to keep the district alive for months. Martha began to cry. Claire's smile disappeared. Open every storehouse. By afternoon, word had spread. Claire worked beside servants, carrying smaller sacks herself until her arms burned. She organized families by household size. Healers received oats and dried meat first. Elderly wolves were sent home with extra firewood. No one bowed because she demanded it. Most barely recognized her at first. Her white cloak had turned gray with snow and grain dust. Then a little boy approached. He held half a piece of bread. For you. Claire crouched. You need it more than I do. He shook his head. My mama says queens eat first. Something tightened in Claire's throat. A good queen doesn't. She closed his fingers around the bread. Go share it with her. The boy ran away. Claire stood and found the courtyard silent. Hundreds of people were looking past her. She turned. Damian stood beneath the granary arch black cloak. Snow on his shoulders. Violet eyes burning. Lord Whitmore stood beside him. Claire's heartbeat dropped. Damian looked at the broken lock. Then the open granaries. Then Claire. Did you do this? Yes. Whitmore stepped forward. She violated a direct royal decree. Claire wiped grain dust from her hands. Your people were hungry. The reserves exist for military emergencies, Whitmore snapped. A starving child is an emergency. You had no authority. Claire felt Damian's gaze on her. She turned toward him. If I have exceeded my position, punish me. A murmur moved through the crowd. Damian walked closer. Claire forced herself not to retreat. He stopped directly before her. You broke a royal lock. Yes. You countermanded my counsel. Yes. You opened winter reserves without permission. Claire lifted her chin. Yes. Damian stared at her. Then his gaze moved beyond her. A woman was feeding soup to 2 children. An old man carried flour against his chest. Martha sat near the infirmary door, her grandson sleeping safely in her arms. Something changed in Damian's face. Whitmore. The councilman straightened. Your Majesty. How much grain was released to this district last week? Whitmore hesitated. Damian's eyes flashed brighter. How much? None. The courtyard seemed to freeze. Why? We were preserving supplies. For whom? Whitmore had no answer. Damian turned toward the captain. Open the remaining granaries. Whitmore paled. Your Majesty, all of them. Damian looked back at Claire. For a moment, neither spoke. Then something unexpected happened. Martha Reed lowered herself to one knee. "Thank you, my queen." Claire froze. Another villager knelt. Then another. Within seconds, the courtyard filled with bowed heads. Claire's breath caught. She had never seen anyone kneel for her. Not willingly. She looked at Damian. The Alpha King was watching the people. Watching their faces. Watching the loyalty he had not commanded being given freely to the woman he had called a substitute. Later, as twilight turned the snow blue, Damian found Claire carrying blankets toward the infirmary. He took the stack from her arms. She blinked. "What are you doing?" "Apparently assisting a criminal." Claire almost smiled. Almost. They walked several steps together. Then Damian spoke quietly. "They fear me." Claire looked at him. He was watching the villagers. "But they love you." There was no jealousy in his voice. Only wonder. Claire pulled her cloak tighter. "I fed them." No, his violet eyes settled on her. "You saw them." The words stopped her. Damian continued toward the infirmary before she could answer. Claire watched his broad figure disappear through the falling snow. For the first time, she wondered whether the wall between them had cracked. And for the first time, Damian Blackwood understood something no throne had ever taught him. Fear could make an entire kingdom kneel. But Claire Bennett had made them kneel because they wanted to. "Your Majesty, behind you." Claire's scream cut through the council chamber one heartbeat before the blade fell. Damian turned. Steel flashed beneath the chandeliers. A man dressed in the gray uniform of a royal servant lunged from behind the council table, a narrow black dagger aimed directly at the Alpha King's back. Everything happened too quickly. Damian's violet eyes ignited. His hand moved toward the sword at his hip. But Claire was closer. She did not think. She ran. Her shoulder struck Damian's chest as she pushed him aside. Then something cold entered her body. For one strange second, Claire felt nothing. Only pressure. Then pain exploded beneath her ribs. She gasped. The assassin ripped the dagger free. Blood sprayed across her white dress. "Claire." Damian's voice did not sound human. Her knees folded. He caught her before she touched the floor. The chamber erupted. Guards rushed forward. Chairs overturned. Someone screamed. Claire heard bones break somewhere behind her as Damian's soldiers seized the attacker, but the sounds seemed to come from very far away. All she could see was Damian. His face had changed. The cold control was gone. "Look at me." His hand pressed against her wound. Claire flinched. "Damian, look at me." His voice cracked. That frightened her more than the blood. Claire forced her eyes open. His violet irises were bleeding toward silver. Not metaphorically. Silver light spread through them like moonlight beneath ice. His wolf. She had never seen it this close to the surface. "Stay with me." "I'm trying." No, his hand tightened against her side. "You stay." Claire might have smiled if breathing had not hurt so badly. Is that a royal command? Something terrible moved across his face. Fear. The Alpha King was afraid. Not angry. Not insulted. Afraid. Claire had never imagined such an expression could belong to Damian Blackwood. Then the assassin laughed. Damian went completely still. "You think this changes anything?" The man spat from beneath the guards. "Blackwood will fall." Damian slowly turned his head. Claire felt it before anyone else did. Power. It rolled from him in a violent wave. Every wolf in the chamber dropped to one knee. Some cried out. The chandeliers trembled. Damian's fingers became claws against Claire's blood-soaked dress. His teeth lengthened. "Damian." He did not hear her. The assassin's smile disappeared. Damian began to rise. Claire caught his wrist. Weakly. "Don't." His silver-violet eyes snapped back to her. "He tried to kill you. And if you shift here?" Damian's breathing became ragged. Claire could feel the beast beneath his skin. A creature built to tear apart anything that threatened what belonged to him. What belonged to him? The thought should have frightened her. Instead, Claire tightened her fingers around his wrist. "Stay with me." The words were barely audible. But Damian heard them. For several seconds, King and Wolf fought behind his eyes. Then his claws slowly withdrew. "Healer!" Damian roared. The doors opened almost immediately. 2 royal healers rushed inside. One reached for Claire. Damian snarled. The healer froze. "Your Majesty, Damian." Claire touched his chest. His heart was pounding beneath her palm. "They need to examine me." He looked down at her hand, then at the blood covering his own. Slowly, reluctantly, he allowed the healers closer. "The blade entered below the ribs," one said. "We need to move her." "I'll carry her." "Your Majesty, we have a stretcher," I said. "I'll carry her." No one argued. Damian lifted Claire into his arms. Her head fell against his shoulder. She could smell winter pine, leather, and something darker beneath it. His wolf. Every step through the corridor sent pain through her side. But Damian held her as though she were something breakable, something precious. Servants pressed themselves against the walls as their king passed. Claire saw their expressions. Shock. The Alpha King's black uniform was covered in blood. Her blood. "Why?" His voice came quietly. Claire opened her eyes. "What? Why did you do it?" She understood. Why had she stepped between him and a knife? Claire rested her cheek against his chest. "You wouldn't have asked that if Martha's grandson had been standing where you were." Damian stared ahead. "That is not an answer." "It is. You could have died. So could you. I am your king." Claire's eyes began to close. "No," his arms tightened. "No, you were a man about to be stabbed." Even through the pain, she felt his steps falter. That was enough. The healer's doors opened. Damian carried her inside and laid her carefully upon the bed. When the healers cut through the blood-soaked fabric, Claire saw the wound for the first time. Deep. Too deep. Her stomach turned. Damian saw it too. His face became stone. "Outside, Your Majesty," the healer ordered. "I am staying. We need room," I said. Claire reached for him. Damian immediately took her hand. "Go." His expression hardened. "Claire, let them work." For several seconds, he refused to release her. Then his thumb moved once across her knuckles. A touch so gentle she almost wondered if she imagined it. "I'll be outside." Claire's vision blurred. "You don't have to." Damian leaned closer. "Yes." His violet eyes held hers. "I do." Hours later, Claire woke to darkness. The pain had become a dull fire beneath the bandages. She turned her head. Damian sat beside the bed, still wearing the same blood-stained clothes. His elbows rested on his knees, his hands clasped before him. He was asleep. Claire stared at him. The most feared Alpha King in the Northern Territories had not returned to his council, had not changed his clothes, had not left. Her fingers moved slightly beneath the blanket. Damian woke instantly. Their eyes met. For one quiet moment, neither spoke. Then his gaze dropped toward her bandages. "You bled on my hands." Claire heard something raw beneath the words. "I'm sorry." His eyes snapped back to hers. "Never apologize for that." He leaned closer. "Never." Claire's breath caught. Damian reached toward her face, then stopped before touching her, as if suddenly uncertain whether he had the right. That hesitation hurt her in a different way. Claire closed the distance herself, resting her cheek against his palm. Damian froze. His hand was warm. Outside, snow struck softly against the window. Inside, the Alpha King stared at the woman he had once called a substitute. And for the first time, Damian understood the truth his wolf had recognized before he had. The thought of losing Claire terrified him more than death ever had. "Don't touch me because you couldn't have her." Claire's words stopped Damian's hand inches from her face. For a moment, neither of them moved. Rain whispered against the windows of the royal chambers, replacing the snow that had buried Blackwood for weeks. The fire burned low behind Damian, throwing amber light across his broad shoulders and the scars Claire had never seen before. She had been out of the infirmary for 4 days. The healers had ordered rest. Damian apparently interpreted rest as keeping her within sight. He appeared at breakfast. At lunch. Outside the library. Once, Claire had awakened from an afternoon nap and found him standing on the balcony speaking quietly with his commander, as though moving a military briefing outside her room was perfectly reasonable. He never explained it. Claire never asked. Tonight, however, the silence between them felt different. Damian had come to change the dressing beneath her ribs because the healer had been called to a difficult birth in the village. Claire had expected a servant. Instead, the Alpha King had appeared carrying clean bandages. Now his black shirt lay discarded across a chair. Claire had discovered why he always dressed so completely. Scars covered him. One crossed his shoulder. Another disappeared beneath his ribs. A pale, jagged mark ran over his chest, close enough to his heart that Claire could not imagine how he had survived it. Her fingers had moved before she could stop them. What happened? Damian had looked down at her hand against his skin. My father. Claire had frozen. Damian's voice remained calm. He believed pain made obedient sons. There had been no self-pity in the words. That made them worse. Claire slowly traced the edge of the scar. And did it? No, a faint, humorless smile touched his mouth. It made a son willing to kill his father. Claire had heard the stories. Everyone had. The ruthless prince who challenged the old Alpha King beneath a blood moon and took the throne from his dying hands. But stories had never mentioned the scars. They rarely did. Damian reached for her then. Not roughly. His fingers brushed a strand of chestnut hair from her cheek. And Claire felt that dangerous warmth again. The same heat she had felt when he placed the wedding ring on her finger. Only stronger. His violet eyes dropped to her mouth. That was when she stopped him. Don't touch me because you couldn't have her. Now Damian stared at her. Vanessa? Claire hated how much hearing the name hurt. You wanted my sister. I agreed to marry your sister. There is a difference? Yes. His answer came too quickly to be polite. Claire's breath caught. Damian stepped back. The marriage to Vanessa was a treaty. I met her 3 times. Claire searched his face. You commissioned her portrait. For a public engagement announcement. You prepared rooms for her. My household prepared rooms for a queen. The ring. My mother's. Claire looked down at the silver band on her finger. Damian's expression shifted. You thought I chose it for Vanessa? I thought everything here was chosen for Vanessa. The words came smaller than she intended. Damian became silent. Claire turned away. That is what being second teaches you. You stop asking whether something belongs to you. You simply assume someone else had it first. The fire cracked softly. Then Damian spoke. I was cruel to you. Claire looked back. An apology from Damian Blackwood seemed so impossible that for a moment she wondered whether she had misunderstood him. His jaw tightened. On our wedding night. Claire said nothing. I was angry that your family had deceived me. Angry that a political agreement had collapsed. And instead of directing that anger toward the people responsible, his eyes held hers. I gave it to you. Claire's throat tightened. You called me a substitute. I know. You made sure I understood I wasn't wanted. His face hardened, not at her. At himself. I know. Silence settled between them. Claire could have punished him with it. Part of her wanted to. Instead she whispered, Why are you telling me this? Damian approached slowly. This time, he did not touch her. Because you nearly died for a man who had given you very little reason to care whether he lived. You were in danger. That explanation still infuriates me. Despite herself, Claire smiled. Something softened in his eyes. His hand rose again. Then stopped. Waiting. Claire noticed. The Alpha King who could command thousands of wolves was waiting for permission to touch one woman. She closed the distance herself. His fingertips brushed her cheek. Warm. Careful. Claire's heartbeat quickened. Damian leaned closer. She could feel his breath. Pine. Rain. Smoke. And something wild beneath his skin. Claire. Her name sounded different in his voice now. Not an obligation. A question. She answered by kissing him. Damian froze. Only for a heartbeat. Then one arm circled her waist, careful of the healing wound, while his other hand cradled the back of her head. The kiss deepened. Not violent. Not possessive. Hungry in the way lonely people become hungry after pretending for too long that they need nothing. Claire felt his wolf stir beneath his skin. Damian immediately pulled back. His breathing was rough. Did I hurt you? No, you're wound, I'm fine. He rested his forehead against hers. Claire closed her eyes. For once, there was no court. No Vanessa. No substitute bride. No alpha king. Only two wounded people standing in firelight, close enough to hear each other breathe. Damian's thumb moved across her cheek. I don't remember her face. Claire opened her eyes. What? Vanessa. His violet gaze never left hers. When I close my eyes now, he touched his forehead gently to hers again. I see the woman covered in blood because she stepped in front of a blade meant for me. Claire's chest tightened. Damian kissed her again. And that night, for the first time since she had entered Blackwood wearing another woman's dress, Claire did not feel like a replacement. She felt chosen. Neither of them knew that somewhere beneath her heart, fate had already begun answering that choice with a second heartbeat. There are two heartbeats. Claire stared at the healer. For a moment, the words meant nothing. Morning light spilled through the infirmary windows, pale gold against rows of glass bottles and dried herbs. Somewhere outside, bells marked the 9th hour. Claire could hear servants crossing the courtyard below, horses stamping against frozen stone, distant voices beginning another ordinary day. But inside the small examination room, the world had stopped. What did you say? Healer Evelyn Carter smiled. One belongs to you. She moved Claire's hand lower against her abdomen. And this one does not. Claire forgot how to breathe. For nearly 2 weeks, she had blamed the nausea on the medicine used after the assassination attempt. Her exhaustion made sense. Her appetite had changed because her body was still healing. There had always been an explanation. Until now. Evelyn pressed 2 fingers gently against Claire's wrist while her other hand rested over the faint warmth below Claire's stomach. Then Claire felt it. Not exactly a sound. Something softer. A tiny rhythm reaching through the strange sensitivity of her omega senses. Life. Her eyes filled instantly. Oh, that was all she could say. Her hand spread protectively over her stomach. Nothing looked different yet. No visible curve. No movement. And still, suddenly, Claire no longer felt alone inside her own body. A laugh escaped her. It broke halfway into a sob. Evelyn squeezed her shoulder. The child feels strong. Child. Claire repeated the word as though learning a new language. Damian's child. The thought sent warmth through her so quickly that she covered her mouth. She imagined his face. Those impossible violet eyes. The way he had held her after the knife. The way he had waited before touching her. The way he had whispered her name the night the distance between them finally disappeared. Would he smile? Claire realized she had never truly seen Damian smile. Not completely. The thought made her laugh again. I want to tell him myself. Of course. No counsel. No announcement. Evelyn nodded. Just him. Claire left the infirmary with the secret pressed beneath her palm. For the first time, Blackwood Castle seemed different. Warmer. The corridors no longer felt borrowed. She passed the western gallery and stopped before the empty wall where Vanessa's portrait had once hung. Claire smiled. Perhaps it was time to put something there. Not her own portrait. Something new. Something that belonged to neither sister. A future. By afternoon, Claire had found a silversmith in the lower village. She refused the jeweled pieces he presented. Instead, she chose a simple silver bracelet small enough to fit inside Damian's palm. On its inner surface, she asked the craftsman to engrave 3 words. For our child. Claire carried the small wooden box back to the castle beneath her cloak. She planned everything. Dinner in the private library. No servants after the meal. She would give Damian the box. He would open it. Then, the castle bells began screaming. Not ringing. Screaming. 3 strikes. Pause. 3 more. Claire stopped in the corridor. Emergency. Guards rushed past her. What happened? No one answered. Then the great gates opened below. Cold wind tore through the entrance hall. Claire approached the upper balcony. A procession was entering Blackwood. 6 exhausted riders. 2 wounded guards. And between them, a woman in a dark green traveling cloak. Claire's fingers tightened around the wooden box. No. The woman pushed back her hood. Golden brown hair fell across her shoulders. Claire stopped breathing. Vanessa. Her sister looked thinner than before. Dirt marked one cheek. A cut crossed her lower lip. But there was no mistaking her. The true bride had returned. Whispers spread immediately. Lady Vanessa. She's alive. The Bennett heir. Claire barely heard them. Boots sounded below. Damian entered from the council wing. His entire body went still when he saw Vanessa. Claire watched from above. She wanted him to look up. She needed him to. He didn't. Vanessa saw Damian and began crying. Your Majesty. She stumbled forward. A guard caught her. They found us, Vanessa gasped. The Eastern Alliance. They killed Daniel. They killed everyone. Damian's expression changed. Not tenderness. Alarm. Who found you? Vanessa shook her head desperately. They know about the treaty. The hall erupted into whispers. Damian moved toward her. Claire's heart twisted. Her fingers closed around the little box beneath her cloak. Only hours earlier, she had imagined placing Damian's hand against her stomach. Now the woman he had originally been meant to marry stood before him. And Claire hated herself for how quickly the old fear returned. Substitute. The word had never truly died. It had only become quiet. Take Lady Vanessa to the healer, Damian ordered. Then his head lifted. His eyes found Claire. Instantly. Across the enormous hall, their gazes locked. Claire saw something change in his face. He took one step toward the stairs. Claire, Your Majesty. A blood-covered rider collapsed near the entrance. Damian turned. The Eastern armies are mobilizing, the man gasped. They say Blackwood broke the original marriage covenant. The hall went silent. Damian's expression hardened. Call the council. Claire felt the small wooden box digging into her palm. The dinner would not happen. Not tonight. Perhaps tomorrow. She told herself that was all this meant. Tomorrow. Her hand drifted toward her stomach. 2 heartbeats. She held onto that truth while the castle erupted around her. Then Vanessa looked up. Her eyes found Claire standing above them. For one long moment, the sisters stared at each other. Vanessa's gaze dropped. Not to Claire's crown. Not to the ring on her finger. To the hand resting protectively over her abdomen. Something unreadable entered Vanessa's face. And Claire suddenly felt cold. Because her sister had always been very good at recognizing what belonged to someone else. And before Claire could tell Damian that he was going to become a father, Blackwood's council was already preparing to decide whether Claire should remain his queen. If Blackwood wants peace, then Claire Bennett cannot remain queen. The words struck the council chamber like a blade laid across a throat. Claire stood outside the half-open doors. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. 2 heartbeats. Only hours ago, those words had filled her with wonder. Now they were the only thing keeping her upright. Inside, 12 council members surrounded the long obsidian table. Damian stood at its head, dressed in black, both hands planted against the polished stone. Vanessa sat near the fire beneath a healer's cloak. Lord Whitmore stood opposite Damian. The original covenant named Vanessa Bennett, he continued. The Eastern Alliance claims her disappearance invalidated the treaty. My marriage is valid, Damian said. His voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. No one disputes that, Your Majesty. Then choose your next words carefully. Whitmore swallowed. The Eastern Pax are not disputing the marriage. They are exploiting it. A map was unfolded across the table. Red markers covered the eastern border. Nearly 6,000 wolves have gathered here, and here. Their message is simple. Restore the original covenant, or they march. Claire's fingers tightened against the door. Restore. Such a gentle word for removing a woman from her own marriage. Vanessa finally spoke. I never knew. Claire's chest tightened at her sister's voice. Vanessa looked toward Damian. Daniel told me we could disappear. He said no one would be hurt. And now Daniel is dead, General Harrison said. Vanessa flinched. Damian's jaw hardened. That is enough. No, Whitmore said. Everyone froze. Defying Damian required either courage or desperation. Whitmore apparently had both. Your Majesty, we cannot pretend emotion changes mathematics. Thousands may die because we refuse to correct one substitution. Substitution. Claire closed her eyes. There it was. Again. She pushed the door open. Every face turned. Damian straightened. Claire. She entered slowly. No one spoke as she crossed the chamber. Her pale dress whispered against the stone floor. She stopped beside Damian. Not behind him. Beside him. I would like to hear the mathematics. Whitmore looked uncomfortable. Your Majesty, this discussion concerns my marriage. Claire met his gaze. Continue. Damian watched her, but he did not interfere. Whitmore drew a breath. The Eastern Alliance recognizes Vanessa as the intended bride. If King Damian restores the original arrangement, their stated justification for war disappears. And what happens to me? Silence. Claire almost smiled. There were always beautiful words before someone sacrificed an Omega. Say it. Whitmore looked toward Damian. The Alpha King's eyes flashed violet. Answer your queen. Whitmore lowered his gaze. Your royal status would be suspended until a lawful solution could be determined. Claire felt something cold move through her. Suspended. Not discarded. Not replaced. Suspended. Courts had such elegant language for humiliation. And Vanessa becomes queen? No decision has been made. But that is what they want. Whitmore said nothing. Claire looked at Vanessa. Her sister's eyes filled with tears. I didn't come back for this. Claire believed her. That somehow made it hurt more. Damian turned toward the council. There will be no restoration. Whitmore stiffened. Your Majesty, I have a wife. Claire's breath caught. Damian's voice hardened. I will not trade her to purchase temporary peace. For one glorious heartbeat, warmth flooded Claire's chest. Then General Harrison placed another message on the table. This arrived 20 minutes ago. Damian read it. Claire watched his expression change. How many? 3 border villages burned. 47 confirmed dead. The warmth vanished. Harrison continued. The Eastern commanders demand an answer before sunrise. If we refuse negotiations, they cross the river tomorrow night. Claire looked around the table. No one was staring at Vanessa anymore. They were staring at her. 47 dead. Because of a treaty she had never signed. Because of a dress she had never wanted. Because she had stood where someone else was supposed to stand. Damian crushed the message in his fist. We mobilize. Against 6,000 wolves? Whitmore demanded. Winter stores are depleted. Claire knew why. She had opened them. Her stomach twisted. Damian looked toward the map. For the first time since Claire had known him, she saw uncertainty. Not cowardice. Responsibility. Thousands of lives sat behind those violet eyes. Claire understood then what crowns truly weighed. Give me until dawn, Damian said. Whitmore stared at him. For what? To find another solution. And Claire? Damian became very still. Claire waited. He could say it now. My queen remains my queen. For words. That was all. Instead, Damian looked at the casualty report. Then at the burning villages marked on the map. When he spoke, his voice sounded like something breaking. Until this crisis is resolved, Claire stopped breathing. Claire's royal authority will be temporarily suspended. The room disappeared. She heard nothing after that. Not Whitmore. Not Vanessa. Not even Damian explaining that it was a political measure. Temporary. For her protection. To prevent the Eastern Pax from claiming Blackwood had rejected negotiations. None of it mattered. Claire looked down at her hand. The wedding ring glimmered beneath the candlelight. For a moment she saw herself as a child again, watching Vanessa receive the larger room. The better tutor. Their grandmother's jewels. The future everyone protected. Claire had always understood. Vanessa first. Claire second. Then Damian had made her believe something different. He had kissed her as though she were the only woman in the world. He had told her he no longer remembered Vanessa's face. But when the cost became high enough, Claire was second again. Claire. Damian reached for her. She stepped back. His hand stopped in empty air. I need time. Claire looked into his eyes. No, his face tightened. I can fix this. She almost told him then. About the healer. About the tiny heartbeat. About the silver bracelet hidden in her room. Instead, Claire placed one protective hand over her stomach. Damian noticed the movement. Confusion flickered across his face. Claire forced a small smile. You already made your choice. Then she turned and walked out. Damian followed her to the doorway. Claire. She did not stop. Because for the first time, she was no longer thinking only about herself. Beneath her palm was someone tiny. Someone innocent. Someone who would never learn that love meant waiting quietly while another person decided whether you were worth choosing. By the time Claire reached her chambers, her tears had dried. She opened the wardrobe, pulled out her old traveling cloak, and placed a small leather bag on the bed. By sunrise, Blackwood would still have its king, but its substitute queen would be gone.